Before he had time to finish the thought, he moved. Alister twisted, kicking both legs up beneath the Regent's guard. Horus staggered backwards. In the same fluid motion, Alister rolled sideways, snatching his blade from the deck and coming to his feet in a single breath. Ravenswood's posture adjusted in recalculation. Now he was studying. Every strike that followed carried less brute force and more inquiry, testing Alister's reaction, measuring timing. One cut curved blow forcing Alister to pivot, another high pushing him towards the battered deck. Steel clanged with rhythm now. "You don't know, do you?" Horus murmured, as they locked blades at the shoulder. "And yet you still haven't rid yourself of it. Strange that. Why would a man who claims no allegiance still hold on to a symbol he should despise?" Alister's jaw clenched. He held his guard tight. "You waste breath." Horus smirked. "I waste nothing." With an elegant pivot, he broke the lock and drove Alister backwards towards the mast, hurting him deliberately with efficiency. "There are things happening in these tides," he said, quick between cuts. "Things beyond mortal comprehension. The darkness swallows faster than you think. You may believe yourself free, but there are forces moving that even you cannot fight alone." The edge in Horus's voice slipped for just a second, from practiced command to something more intimate. A flicker of respect, a strange, wary admiration. Alister said nothing, but something inside him turned. He recognized something within his opponent that he saw in himself. He didn't know the past, but now he could feel it catching up. Ravenswood's next strike came harder and more direct. It clanged off Alister's blade and twisted down across his coat, pinning it to the mast behind him. The hilt shuddered with the force of it, and his attempts to move were in vain. Horus stepped forward, gun already drawn, the barrel hovering inches from Alister's temple. Across the deck, the battle paused as gunwales screamed for bearings. Quarterdeck shouted over the reverb of shattered rigging. The crew was being pushed back and surrounded. They never stood a chance in this battle, and in their hearts they all knew just how slim their chances were. From a broken ladderway, Kezia emerged, blood on her sleeve, and another pistol clutched in her fist. She scanned the deck and saw them. Alister, with a gun held to his temple, and Ravenswood standing over him just waiting to pull the trigger. Her scream cracked like cannon fire, and suddenly, a blinding white light, as though a hole had torn in the sky itself, exploded into view. No flash of gunpowder, not a storm cloud in sight. There was nothing to explain this. Just a vertical, jagged rip of lightning, cast down with the weight of a god's breath. It struck the sea, just beyond the Regent's lead ship. The air hissed with raw, deafening energy. The crack split the world and thunder followed, violently crashing over the ocean waves. It rolled over the fleet in a deafening shockwave, shaking sails, dropping men to their knees. It was no ordinary storm. It was intervention, seemingly from the gods themselves. Alister blinked. The gun was still aimed at his head, but Horus's hand had stilled as he looked at the otherworldly sight that had risen before them. Everyone was looking skyward now as they continued to fight for their lives and freedom, as the heavens opened and something was watching. Alister's breath was shallow as the barrel of Ravenswood's pistol hovered inches from his brow, the Regent's sword still buried in the folds of his coat, and into the mast at his back. The chaos of the deck faded into the background. Footfalls, screams, the clash of blades, all became distant. In that still moment, it was just them, with the question of life or death hanging in the air. Then a bolt of white-hot lightning ripped the air open behind Horus. It did not fork across the sky or arc harmlessly into the sea. Instead, it descended vertically and struck the deck with impossible precision. The thunder cracked, and he was already there. The figure of water and wreckage. The very same whom Alister had encountered mere moments before. It formed from the very flash, rising in the space where the rain kissed the slick timber. Kelp twisted like tendons through its limbs, and its eyes were lightless hollows, but its stare pierced Horus like judgment incarnate. Before the Regent could turn, he was disarmed, his sword wrenched from his grip and flung halfway across the deck, with a hiss of seawater trailing behind it. Then a hand, cold and shifting, shaped from the waves themselves, wrapped tightly around his collar, and their eyes locked. Ravenswood froze. The tension in his body went rigid with fear, a fear unlike anything he had experienced before. He drew his breath to speak, but too late. The figure hurled him backward in a single, effortless gesture. His body collided with a knot of enforcers at the rear quarterdeck, cracking ribs, scattering men, and sending half a dozen sprawling over barrels and rail. Before a command could rise from the Regent's ranks, the figure turned, and Alister stood, newly freed from the mast. Their gazes met, and for a fraction of a breath, the storm gave way to memory. He knew this pressure, the being from his vision, the tide that had whispered stillness into chaos. The figure gave no gesture and no word, only a knowing nod, soft as the sea's breath on dawn-swollen sails. Then it moved, not as a man, but as the ocean itself. Water erupted from the deck. It surged across the timber in vast coils. Regent enforcers were swept from their feet, dragged screaming towards the railings, and sucked into whirlpools that had not been there a breath before. The wave did not touch Alister's crew. It parted around them like smoke around statues, all except for one, Kezia. She had barely found her footing when the mist swept her. She inhaled sharply as her enchantment hiding her from sight broke like a snapped thread. For a heartbeat she vanished in foam, and then stumbled free, visible again and soaked through. She gasped as her eyes met Alister's, but there was no time.
"Captain!"
Gunwale's voice ripped from the helm.
"A maelstrom! It's forming under the ship and fast!"
The crew froze, then scattered, scrambling to secure the deck, retie sail lines, and drop anchor. But the sea answered to no anchor today. The tide was shifting of its own will. Alister turned towards the bow and watched in horror as the edges of the ocean spun inward. Currents that should have scattered across miles now twisted with supernatural alignment. A whirlpool, vast and hungry, widening with each breath. The Regent fleet felt it. The ships to port and stern jerked into disarray. Enforcers shouted and sails tore. Rudders shattered against the impossible draw of water circling beneath them.
"The wind's turned on us!"
Someone screamed.
"We're losing canvas!"
Kezia gripped the starboard rigging, helping pull down the foresail. Her hands ached from salt and rope. But there was something worse. This feeling. She had felt this before. The memory was gone, torn from her childhood like a tooth. But the fear had remained. Then the rope behind her whipped free. A barrel broke loose from the aft rigging, rolling unchecked across the tilting deck.
"Kezia!"
Bootlicker shouted, leaping forward to intercept it. But he was too slow. The barrel slammed into her legs and she cried out. The sound was swallowed by the wind. As she hit the boards hard, her head cracking against the plank with a sickening thud. She did not move, and Alister saw her fall. The otherworldly figure vanished. The crew, the whirlpool, the thunder, all of it faded into white static. He ran towards her. Barrels rolled past him and rain hammered the deck. He didn't feel any of it. He dropped beside her, his heart thumping erratically against his ribs, and he lifted her limp, soaked form off the deck. Without hesitation, he rushed down the slick steps, shielding her body with his own. As crates fell and ropes snapped, the whole ship groaned with effort. He kicked open his door to his quarters and lowered her into the cot. Her skin was clammy, and a small cut bled slowly along her brow. He hesitated as he made his way towards the door, and with one final look of concern, he stepped back into the storm and shut the door soundly behind him. Outside, the walls of the sea rose. No longer could they be described as waves. They were so massive in proportion. Mainsail clung to the mast top as wind snapped at his coat, and he turned full circle. His voice caught in his throat. All around them, Regent vessels spiraled. Dozens were swept into the vortex and broken apart as the current shredded them into timbers. Their crew went down with sails wrapped around them like shrouds. Only one vessel pulled free, by sheer luck or fate. The Sovereign's hand. Ravenswood stood soaked at the prow, shaking, eyes locked on the epicenter where the debt collector had not yet fallen. And there at its base, the water being surged with the full power of the ocean, towering over everything above it. Waves shaped like hands curled around the debt collector's hull, shielding it, holding it aloft amid the eye of destruction. Alister looked skyward. A vast wall of water loomed overhead, churning with crackling light, and it began to collapse. One final flash. A bolt of lightning erupted, not from above, but from within the debt collector. It coursed upward, striking the main mast and bursting outward in a shockwave of pure, white energy, and the ship vanished, leaving no trace that it had ever been there. Horace Ravenswood fell to his knees. The ocean stilled and the wind died. The storm was gone. The only thing that remained was silence. Grimrose stumbled across the slick deck of the Sovereign's hand, eyes wide with confusion and exhaustion.
Captain, what now?
No answer. Horace stared at the sea, his breath shallow. He didn't understand. He needed something, anything, to make sense again. His fists clenched and his eyes burned. And then he screamed. A sound of pure fury and loss of control ripped through the unnatural silence that still hung in the air.